I've been dead for several days, and my husband still doesn't know. He hasn't come home at all. Not until his friend, shocked, came across a piece of news. Chapter 1, I've been dead for 3 days. I've been dead for 3 days, and Hyo Yeonhyun still doesn't know. I float silently above the ceiling, staring down at my lifeless body sprawled across the living room floor. A pool of dark red blood has long dried, seeping into the white carpet like a blooming poisonous rose. Sunlight filters in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, passing straight through me, illuminating the overturned chairs, scattered documents, and chaotic mess left. Behind Dot, the door is ajar. The lock clearly broken. This wasn't suicide, Dot. It wasn't an accident, Dot. It was murder. I remember everything, Dot. The footsteps came too fast. He wore gloves, a cap, even sunglasses. I reached for a fruit knife, fighting with everything I had, but I was too weak. Before I could scream, his hands were already on my throat. "Don't blame me, miss," he whispered in my ear, his voice low and hoarse. "You were just unlucky." I don't even know how exactly I died, only the pain, the choking, and then darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing over my own corpse. I didn't cry. All my tears had been used up while I was still alive. Hyo Yeonhyun hasn't come. Back. This apartment, once warm, has been nothing but a tomb since I died. I count the hours. 3 days. On the third night, still no police, no neighbors, no one noticed. Even my cat starving in the corner. Cries weakly for help. No one hears her either. I thought he'd come just for a moment. Just to check. It's his home too, after all. And we'd only had a fight. I watched the second hand of the clock circle around, endlessly. Silence wraps the living room like a suffocating shroud. Outside, the city glows, vibrant and alive. Inside, I lie cold and still in a pool of blood. At that moment, Hyo Yeonhyun sits 15 kilometers away, in a sleek black leather chair in the CEO's office of his company. He's in a perfectly tailored black suit, not a single wrinkle on his white shirt. His face is cold, expression unreadable. His assistant, Zhao Li, walks in with a phone in hand. "President Hyo, you should see this." "What is it?" he asks, not even looking up. "It's news," Zhao Li replies, voice uneasy. Hyo Yeonhyun impatiently grabs the phone, eyes scanning the screen, then suddenly freezes. The headline is stark and bold. "Woman found dead in luxury apartment after 3 days. Murder suspected." The picture beneath it shows a building he knows all too well. Our home. He shoots up from his chair, voice sharp. "Which apartment?" Zhao Li swallows hard. "The police say it's yours." The pen slips from Hyo Yeonhyun's fingers, ink, smudging the pristine contract on his desk, like a fresh stain of guilt. Sirens echo outside. Finally, someone called the police. Several officers push open the door, their gloves already on, evidence bags in hand. One of them kneels beside my body. Time of death, over 72 hours. Signs of struggle, likely a break-in. Another glances at the forced open safe. Empty, could be the motive. I hover in the corner, helpless, voiceless, invisible. The victim's identity is confirmed: Chen Sia, 28, female. Emergency contact is listed as Hyo Yeonhyun. A voice crackles over the police radio. "Notify the next of kin." Hyo Yeonhyun arrives. He storms past the yellow tape, like a man possessed. Every inch of his expression screams denial. He freezes in the doorway, scanning the chaos, the silence, the shattered remains of what used to be our life. Then his eyes land on the body, shrouded in white. He takes a step forward, then another. "Chen Si?" His voice breaks like cracked porcelain. He pulls back the sheet, and then he breaks. He stumbles backward, hands trembling, face pale. No, this isn't real." He drops to his knees beside the body, forehead pressed to the cold floor. He doesn't cry, but I can feel his heart tearing. I stand there, watching him fall apart, but I can't do anything. Not anymore. I remember the last time we spoke. That night, I asked him, "Do you even care about me anymore?" He replied coldly, "If that's what you think, then there's nothing more to say." I slammed the door. He didn't stop me. Then I died, and now, finally, he's here, but I can't come back. The morgue is freezing. My body lies in a cold drawer. Nameless and silent. The investigation is still ongoing. The media starts spinning theories. Maybe it was a love triangle, maybe revenge, maybe I was too stubborn, too proud. Huo Yenian says nothing to the press. He just sits alone, sleepless, still, sometimes. He looks toward the corner of the room, his brow furrowed, as if trying to feel something, anything, I want to speak to him, to say, "I don't hate you." But I can't. All I can do is stay near, watching him grieve in silence. On the third night, he finally speaks. "If I had just asked one more question that night, would you still be alive? If I had stayed, would you still be here?" His fingers dig into his face, nails white from pressure. "I'm sorry, Chun. I float in front of him, reaching out my hand to touch his face, but I can't feel a thing. The air passes through me, just like all the times he passed through my emotions without seeing, but at least now, he knows I'm gone." Chapter 2. The crime scene. The police sealed off the building at dawn. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind, encircling the once peaceful high-rise like a silent accusation. Reporters stood outside, murmuring into microphones of feigned solemnity. Curious neighbors peered from half-closed doors and balconies, whispering among themselves, piecing together rumors. Inside the apartment, my body was gone. What remained was the aftermath: bloodstains, broken glass, scattered traces of my last moments. The scent of iron still lingered, mixing with the faint aroma of perfume I used to wear. A forensic investigator crouched beside the toppled coffee table, snapping pictures. Another officer held a flashlight under the couch, searching for hidden clues. "She put up a fight," one of them murmured. "The attacker must have been strong. Look at those bruises. Defensive wounds on the arms." A younger officer replied quietly, 3 days alone with no one noticing." Their voices faded into white noise. I had stopped trying to be heard. Screaming, crying, whispering, it was all the same. They couldn't feel me. I stood near the window, watching everything like a forgotten shadow. Then the door opened again. He came back. Huo Yenian stepped into the apartment with slow, heavy steps. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His usual pristine appearance was gone, his tie crooked, his collar wrinkled, his hair uncombed. His eyes were bloodshot. He stopped at the threshold as if afraid to take another step. His gaze swept over the room. The blood, the overturned vase, the shattered photo frame. He walked over and knelt down, picking up the photo, the one of us taken 2 years ago in front of the ocean. I was smiling. He was pretending not to. The glass was cracked, but the picture was intact. He held it for a long time. "I wasn't supposed to see you like this," he said softly. I floated behind him, reaching out, as if my fingers could brush his shoulder. Of course, they couldn't. "Mr. Huo," a detective interrupted him gently, "we'll need your statement." He nodded silently and stood up. "I wasn't here," he said, voice hoarse. "We had a fight. I hadn't been home in days." The detective paused. "Did she mention any threats? Strange people? Anything unusual?" He shook his head. "No, she didn't say anything, but maybe I just didn't hear it." They led him to the table, asked him to sign documents, review footage from the building's security system. The cameras in the hallway had caught a man entering the premises late at night, hooded, gloved, careful not to show his face. The footage skipped. The timestamp blurred. "What the hell?" One officer frowned. "Footage corrupted again?" I watched the glitch with unease. It wasn't just a technical error. I could feel something. My presence had started to interfere with things, lights flickering when I got too close, screens distorting when I focused too hard. A current of emotions surged through me. Fear, rage, guilt. It messed with electricity. I realized But I couldn't control it. Yet later that evening, the apartment was quiet again. Only he remained. He stood in the middle of the living room, eyes scanning the space like it held the answers he needed. I should have called you, he whispered. I should have come back. He sat on the edge of the sofa, the same one we used to share, his hands buried in his hair. The silence between us was more painful than any words. He didn't cry. Hiwo Yonian was the kind of man who didn't show emotion, not even at funerals. Not even when his mother died. He had been taught to hold it all in. Strength, control, poise. But this time, he looked like a man about to break. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver key. My key, the one I gave him when we first moved in together. He stared at it like it was the heaviest thing in the world. Do you remember? He murmured, more to himself than anyone else. That night you gave this to me, you said. Now you can always come home. A pause. His grip tightened. I never did. I watched him sit there, quiet, unmoving, for what felt like hours. He didn't touch his phone. He didn't answer calls. He just sat. And then as the city lights outside began to dim, he stood up and walked toward my bedroom. I followed him. The room was exactly as I'd left it and made bed. Open wardrobe, books. On the knit stand. He hesitated at the door. And then, slowly, he stepped inside. His eyes landed on the pillow. My pillow. He walked over, knelt, and pressed his forehead to it. For the first time, I saw him tremble. Chun-si, he whispered, barely audible. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it. His voice cracked. I floated closer. The air around us charged and electric. My presence warped the mirror slightly. The light bulb buzzed above us. Come back, he begged. Just once. Yell at me, hit me, anything, just come back. But I see OULD in single quotes T. Outside, the streetlights flickered. The city was getting colder. My time, I felt, was running short. I didn't know how long I'd be able to stay like this half. Here, half gone. Somewhere between life and whatever came next. But I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. Not until he knew everything. Not until my death meant something. I looked at him, slumped against the bed, whispering my name in the dark. And for the first time since I died, I didn't feel alone. Chapter 3. Cold body, warm memories. The morgue was quieter than death itself. Sterile white walls, cold steel drawers, the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Everything was too clean, too still, like the world was trying to erase the fact that someone once lived in the body lying motionless behind door 7B. My body. I hovered by the wall, watching the coroner prepare to examine me. He adjusted his gloves, turned on the recorder, and began his clinical report. Victim, female, approximately 28 years old. Multiple bruises on the arms and upper torso. Ligature marks on the neck suggest manual strangulation. Time of death estimated at 72 to 80 hours ago. His voice blurred into a low drone as I stared at myself. I had never seen myself like this before, pale. Lips blue, blood crusted at the corner of my mouth. Eyes closed like I was only asleep, but the kind of sleep you don't wake from. Stripped away my clothes, my dignity, my warmth. Now I was just a case number. Case. CH-22-5-07 03.unsolved.unwanted.unknown. I tried to speak. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. Meanwhile, across town, Hiwo Yonian sat in his car in the parking lot of the funeral home. He hadn't gone inside yet. He couldn't. Rain pattered gently against the windshield. His hands were clenched around the steering wheel, knuckles pale. The photo frame he picked up from the apartment sat in the passenger seat beside him. He looked at it again and again, as if hoping it would change. As if the woman in the picture might suddenly blink, smile. Laughed out. She didn't. I didn't. He rested his head against the steering wheel and whispered my name like a prayer. Chen, see? I drifted back to the apartment. To the place where everything had ended, but also where everything had once begun. It was late. No more officers, no yellow tape. Just quiet. The furniture remained exactly as we had left it. The gray couch where We watched bad movies. The bookshelf I insisted on organizing by color. This silly little kitchen magnet he bought on our first trip together. All untouched, I floated past the doorway and into the bedroom. Our bedroom. The scent of cedarwood still lingered in the air of his cologne. My lotion, the lavender sachet I kept in the closet. It was all still here, like time had frozen the second I died. I moved to the vanity and stared into the mirror. I couldn't see myself anymore, no reflection. Just a blank glass pane, and the hollow ache of everything I used to be. I remembered. The first night we moved in, we were young, stupid, and drunk on hope. The apartment was half furnished, the walls bare. We ate takeout on the floor and clinked beer bottles like we were celebrating something enormous. He had pulled me close and whispered, "Welcome home." I laughed and replied, "This place doesn't even have a sofa yet." He tapped my forehead. "Then you'll sit on my lap." We made love on a mattress with no sheets, under a ceiling with a flickering bulb, and it was perfect. That version of us was so far away now. Back at the morgue, the coroner zipped up the body bag. Victim ready for transport. He told the assistant. They wheeled me out. I watched them load my body like a package into the transport van, like I was already a memory. Later that night, Hyo Union finally stepped inside the funeral home. The attendant greeted him with a clipboard, but he barely looked at it. He walked into the viewing room and stopped. There, I was behind glass. Peaceful. Too still. His hand reached out, touching the barrier between us. "Why didn't you call me?" He asked. "If you were in danger, why didn't you say something?" His voice cracked. He tried again. "Was it because of me?" No one answered, only the echo of his guilt. Flashback. 2 weeks ago. We were arguing in the kitchen. He stood with his arms crossed, eyes cold, voice sharper than usual. "You're too sensitive. Chun-see, you. Not everything's about you. And you're too blind to see when someone's hurting." I fired back. He rolled his eyes and turned away. "I don't have time for this." "No, you never do. Not for us." He paused at the doorway, back still facing me. "If you keep acting like this, I don't know how long I can stay." That was the moment. That was the crack. I remember watching the door close behind him and wondering if I had just lost the only person who ever mattered. Back to now. He sat in the corner of the viewing room, hands clasped, eyes locked on the casket. He didn't move, didn't blink. Just stared. The funeral director asked if he wanted to see me one last time. Without the glass, he said no. I don't deserve to. Back in the apartment, I drifted once more through the rooms I used to call home. I passed by the bookshelf and saw it. A photograph tucked between the novels. Not of us. Of a child. I blinked. No. Not a child. It was me when I was 10. I didn't even know he had this. I remember the day it was taken school picture day. My front tooth missing. My ponytail crooked. He must have found it after visiting my mother. And he kept it. All this time. Even when we fought. Even when he walked away. I returned to the funeral home just before dawn. He was asleep in the chair, head tilted back, mouth slightly open, lines of exhaustion carved deep into his face. I hovered above him, whispering things I couldn't say. When I was alive, I loved you. I never stopped. I just wanted you to look at me the way you did when we first met. His brow furrowed in his sleep. "I'm still here," I said. The lights above flickered. For the briefest moment, he opened his eyes and looked right at me. Chapter 4. Whisper after death. It began with a flicker. A light bulb above the hallway mirror buzzed once, dimmed, then went out completely. The janitor at the funeral home muttered something under his breath and walked away, assuming it was faulty. Wiring, but I knew better. It was me. For days, I had been nothing but a helpless presence, floating through walls and memories. Watching but never touching. Screaming but never heard. Now something was changing. A surge of emotion, grief, regret. Anger had built up like a storm inside me. And it was starting to bleed out. I tested it, hovering in the far corner of the funeral home break room. I focused on the kettle. It was unplugged, cold, forgotten. I remembered how much I hated cold tea. I thought of that, focused on that stupid petty detail. Then the kettle shook. Just once. Enough to clatter against the tray. The staff turned their heads immediately. What was that? I felt it. The pulse, not just energy, but presence. I wasn't gone completely. Not yet. The police reopened the scene for further examination. Detective Lynn arrived that morning newly transferred, quiet but observant. She wasn't like the others. While her colleagues cracked jokes or filled reports mechanically, Lynn stood silently in the middle of my ruined apartment, eyes closed. This doesn't feel like a robbery, she said finally. Her partner raised an eyebrow. Safe was cleaned out, door forced open. What else could it be? Lynn walked slowly toward the balcony. Her fingers brushed the curtains, still torn from the struggle. No signs of forced entry elsewhere. Victim fought back. A lot. Why didn't neighbors hear? She knelt down next to a shattered lamp, and this lamp toppled toward the door, not away. Like she was chasing someone out, not hiding. She stood and looked toward the hallway camera system. Check the footage again. We did. It's corrupted. Do it again. She glanced toward the bedroom. Then she paused. Very slowly. Her gaze shifted. And for one long second, I felt it. She was looking at me. It was the first time since I died that someone actually noticed. I floated closer, hesitant. Her brow furrowed. The air between us felt heavy, thick with something unseen. Then her eyes snapped toward the hallway light. It flickered, buzzed. Did you feel that? She asked her partner. What? You okay? Lynn didn't answer. Her hand hovered near her pocket. Someone's still here. I followed her after she left the apartment. Not because I wanted to haunt her, but because for the first time I felt seen. As if I weren't just a leftover memory, but a signal someone had picked up on. She sat in her car, reading my file. My name, my address, my photograph, my old ID photo, the one where I looked like I'd just gotten out of a breakup, which, ironically, I had. She scribbled something in her notebook. Why didn't you scream? She murmured. Why didn't anyone hear you? I wanted to answer. I hovered near the dashboard and focused all my energy into her phone. The screen lit up. She flinched. Text window opened on its own. Letters began to appear. Hio, she stared, stunned. Then the screen went dark. We both froze. She whispered, Who are you? Back in the funeral home, Hio Yenian stared at my casket like it might vanish if he blinked. He hadn't gone home, hadn't eaten, hadn't spoken to anyone since identifying my body. Instead, he sat in silence, playing my last voicemail. On a loop. Hey, it's me. I made stir fry tonight. If you're still mad, that's okay. Just come home, okay? He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he said aloud. I should have been there. No one answered, but I was listening. That night, he had a dream, or maybe it wasn't a dream. In it, I stood at the foot of the bed. Not floating, not translucent. Real. My eyes stared straight into his. You left me, I said. He shot upright, gasping. He looked around. The room was empty, but the picture frame beside the bed, the one he had knocked over last night, was standing. Upright again, his pulse pounded. Was he losing his mind? Or was I truly still here? Detective Lynn didn't report the incident with the phone. She kept it to herself, but the next day she returned to the apartment, alone. She walked into the bedroom and stood still. I don't know if you're really there, she said softly. But if you are, I'll find out what happened to you. I promise. I hovered above her, unsure of how to respond. Then, without thinking, I reached out, tried to push the window open. It clicked. She turned. Saw it move, her lips parted in shock. All right then, she whispered. Let's do this together. Something inside me sparked Dot for the first time since I died. I didn't feel powerless. Maybe I couldn't speak. Maybe I couldn't touch, but I could guide. And with her help, I might still get justice. Chapter 5. The missing safe. The safe was gone. Not physically, it was still embedded in the wall behind the bookshelf, hidden behind the row of outdated travel guides and cookbooks I never used. But when the police opened it, the contents had vanished. No jewelry, no cash. Just empty air. Detective Lynn stood in front of it now, her expression unreadable. Her fingers traced the smooth edge of the steel door. This isn't a robbery, she murmured again. Robbers don't take files and ignore gold chains. Her partner, Officer Zhang, shrugged. Maybe the perp got spooked mid-job. No. Lynn shook her head. They knew exactly what they were looking for. She bent down and pointed at the tiny scratches around the lock mechanism. Precision work. Not rushed, not messy. And most importantly, only the safe was touched. Everything else was a distraction. Zhang frowned. What was in it? She didn't answer, but I knew. Inside that safe were two things. A letter from my mother, sealed in yellowing paper, and a USB drive labeled in my handwriting, in case anything happens to me. I never told anyone about it, not even Hyo Yanyan. But after my mother passed, she left me with one final warning. Some debts? Don't die. With time. I didn't believe her at first, until I started receiving strange calls, blocked numbers, empty voicemails, footsteps in the hallway that didn't belong. I reported it once. The officer brushed me off, said I was just stressed, but the fear stayed. So I compiled everything I knew, old documents from my mother's company, accounts. That didn't match. Names that reappeared too often. I put it all on that drive, just in case. Now it was gone, and whoever had taken it was the one who killed me. Detective Lynn sat alone at her desk that night, rewatching the security footage for the third time. The hallway video still glitched at the crucial moment right when a hooded figure slipped through the stairwell door. But Lynn wasn't watching the footage anymore. She was listening. Background noise, subtle static, then a whisper, barely audible. Not in the hallway mic, but on her own computer speaker. Help! She froze. REW. A UND. Listened again. Help! She stared at the waveform. There was no logical source, no logical explanation, but the voice it sounded like. Meanwhile, Hyo Yanyan returned to the apartment for the first time since the funeral. He stood at the threshold for a long moment before unlocking the door. The scent of dust had begun to settle, but beneath it lingered something else. My perfume. A faint trace of lavender and white musk, like a ghost of me brushing past. He walked through the place silently, stopped in front of the wall safe. He hadn't told the police, but he knew the code. I told him once, in passing. He pretended not to remember, but he remembered everything. He entered the digits, my birthday, backward. The safe clicked. And it was empty. He didn't speak, didn't curse, didn't rage. Instead, he slowly sat on the floor in front of it, eyes unfocused. I knew you were hiding something, he said quietly. I just didn't ask, because I was afraid of the answer. His voice grew softer. And now I can't protect you. I was there, standing just a few feet away. The air around him rippled as I focused all my strength into a single touch. The lamp beside him blinked off, then again. He looked up. Chun sighed. Hugh? He whispered. The lights steadied. I wanted to scream. I'm here. I'm right here, but the moment passed, and I was invisible again. The next day, Lynn requested access to the safe's manufacturing records. She discovered something interesting. Only 2 people had the override codes, me and the man who installed it. The installer was dead. Died 2 months ago in a car accident. Too convenient. She started digging and found a link. The installation company had once been subcontracted by Shell Corporation, one tied to an offshore account. That same account had recent activity. A withdrawal under a name she'd seen before. She tapped her pen against the desk, piecing it together. The name was Yuo. She didn't confront him immediately. Instead, she requested a formal meeting under the guise of continuing the investigation. They met in a quiet corner of a downtown cafe. I appreciate you agreeing to meet, she began. Hyo Yeonian looked as composed as ever, but there were dark circles under his eyes. His shirt collar was wrinkled, his watch forgotten at home. Of course, he replied. Anything to help. Lin slid a photo across the table, a screen grab from a business registry. Does this name mean anything to you? He barely glanced. I didn't know. It's tied to an offshore account, she said, watching him. One that moved money the day before Chan Si-chu died. His expression didn't change, but his fingers curled ever so slightly. I think she found something. Lin continued. Something someone wanted hidden. Something worth killing for. He met her gaze. If you're accusing me, I'm not yet. She leaned forward. But if you know anything about what she was working on, now's the time to speak. He looked down at the table. Silence. Then. He said, she told me once that her mother died under strange circumstances. I didn't listen. I thought she was being paranoid. Pause. She wasn't. That night, Lin returned to her office and pulled out the audio clip again. She slowed it down, adjusted the frequencies, isolated the whisper. The waveform shifted. A second voice emerged. Lower. Male, not me. Take the drive. Her heart raced. She pressed play again. Kill her if you have to. I hovered beside her. My energy was growing stronger. And now someone else's voice had joined mine. A voice. I remembered. The man in my apartment that night. The one who strangled me. The killer. Chapter 6. The killer is among you. He was right there. I didn't realize it at first. Not until I retraced the night of my death again and again, floating through those blood-soaked memories like a ghost stuck on repeat. The figure had moved with practiced ease, not frantic like a burglar, not clumsy like an amateur. He knew the layout of the apartment. He knew where the cameras were and how to avoid them. He knew the safe was there. He knew the code. He didn't come to steal. He came to silence. It was something small that tipped me off. A watch. Sleek, silver, expensive. When he twisted my wrist. That night, forcing me to drop the knife, the cuff of his jacket pulled back. I saw it just for a second. It wasn't the kind of thing strangers wore into robberies. It was familiar. Now, watching Hyo Yeonian's assistant, Shen Wei, adjust his sleeve in the office that morning, I saw it again. Same model. Same angle. Same scratch on the dial. My blood turned cold. Hyo Yeonian sat at his desk, eyes distant. He hadn't been sleeping. Shen Wei brought in a fresh set of documents and placed them on the table. This is the project summary from yesterday's meeting. I also arranged the call with the board for Friday. Yeonian nodded absently. Sir, Shen Wei added cautiously, you should get some rest. He said it gently, concerned, professional, but I saw it now too smooth. Too rehearsed. He was watching him, not with loyalty, but calculation. That night, I tried again. I floated through the penthouse, tugging at lights, flickering electronics. It had worked before, at least enough to catch Detective Lin's attention. But Yeonian didn't respond this time. He sat by the fireplace, my old shawl folded in his hands, staring into nothing. The framed photo on the table still stood me, laughing on a beach, sun in my eyes. A moment we barely remembered taking, but one he couldn't stop looking at. Why didn't I see it? He whispered, you tried to tell me something. His voice cracked. I thought you were being dramatic. The flames flickered. I hovered behind him, hands shaking. Please, I whispered. Please look at him. Look at Shen Wei. But the words dissolved into air. He couldn't hear me. Not yet. Detective Lin, however, was getting closer. After isolating the secondary voice from the audio clip, she began running a background. trace on every male known to frequent the victim's circle. And one name came up with a curious overlap. Shen Wei. No criminal record. Clean resume. Elite university graduate. Flawless credentials. Too flawless. She dug deeper. Shen had changed his name at 23. His original surname? Shen Liang, connected to a scandal involving Cheng Group, my mother's old company. A shell account traced to embezzled funds. Never proven. Never charged, but the link. Was there a dot? Lin stared at the screen, her instincts tingling. She picked up her phone. I need a warrant. At the same time, Yunian sat in his office late into the night. Everyone else had left. The building was empty. He opened his laptop, stared at the folder labeled Chun Si Yu Personal. He hadn't clicked on it in months. Inside were photos, videos, voicemails, and one scanned letter written by me, never sent. Yunian, I think someone's following me. I don't want to worry you, but strange things are happening. And if anything happens to me, please look in the safe. I know you don't believe in ghosts, but if I could come back, I'd slap you for not checking sooner. Chun Si Yu, his breath caught. He read it again, and this time, he felt it. He opened the camera feed from the office. Shen Wei had stayed late. Said he forgot his phone charger, but there he was accessing a locked cabinet. Yunian leaned forward. The cabinet only stored archived documents from 6 months ago. Nothing useful, unless someone thought otherwise. The next day, Lin arrived at the company unannounced. I'm looking for Shen Wei, she told the receptionist. He's in a meeting. Not anymore. She walked past without waiting for permission. Shen looked up from his desk as she entered. Calm, polite. Detective Lin, what can I help you with? She sat across from him, placed a folder on the table. Inside were the corporate links, the name change, the embezzlement case. His fingers didn't twitch. His eyes didn't shift. He just smiled. You've done your homework. Why did you change your name? She asked. I had family issues. It's not illegal. And yet, the company your family was involved with is the same one Chen Si was investigating. What a coincidence. Still smiling, coincidences happen? Lane leaned closer. If I check your financials, what will I find? Silence, he said softly. You won't find anything. Back in the penthouse, Yunian went through Shen's archived emails. He shouldn't have had access. But he found a backdoor one Shen forgot to erase. In it, encrypted messages. Sent to a foreign server. Keywords. USB. Target. Neutralize. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. No, he whispered. No, no. The assistant he trusted for years, the man he relied on. He stood, knocking over the chair. I'll kill you, he said quietly. If you did this, I swear I'll kill you. I watched him. I wanted to scream. You're not crazy, you're right. But all I could do was guide. The lights in the room flared once. His phone buzzed. Anne. Unknown number. A single message. Meet me at 10. I have the proof. No sender, but I knew who it was. Detective Lin. Chapter 7. In the dream, I told you the truth. It started with rain. Not a light drizzle, but the kind of relentless downpour that soaked everything in seconds, filling the air with the sharp scent of wet asphalt and something older, deeper. Yunian stood in the middle of the empty road. Barefoot, suit soaked, face lifted to the sky. He looked younger here, like the version of him I fell in love with before the company, before the coldness, before he learned how to hide everything behind silence. And then he saw me. I was standing just across the street, under the flickering light of a broken street lamp. He stared. Not with confusion, but with recognition. Chen Si? I didn't move. I was afraid that if I took a step forward, I'd wake him up, afraid this fragile dream would shatter. But he took the first step, then another. Then he was standing in front of me, chest rising and falling, hands trembling. I thought I lost you, he said. You did. The rain didn't touch us anymore. The world had gone silent. I tried to come back, he said, his voice cracking. But I was too late. You didn't even know I was gone, I replied. For 3 days, I was lying there, alone. He flinched. I'm sorry. No, I said. Don't say that unless you mean it. He reached for me hesitant. His fingers brushed my cheek dot, and this time, I felt it. Warm. Solid. Real Dot's touch got my breath hitched. I miss you, he whispered. I stared into his eyes. No, you regret me. That's not the same thing. A beat of silence. I loved you, he said, finally. I didn't say it enough, but I did, I do. Tears welled up in my eyes. Then why did you leave? His voice broke. Because I thought you'd always be there. I thought I had more time. A storm cracked above us. The dream began to flicker. No, I said, gripping his hand. Not yet. I don't want to wake up. Then listen. To me before you do. The world stilled again. This time, when I spoke, I felt something shift, like the dream had bent to my will, like I finally had control. There's something I need you to know, I said. He nodded. The man who killed. And he wasn't a stranger. His brows furrowed. You know him, I said, pressing my hand to his chest. You've trusted him. His mouth parted. Shen Wei. Find the drive, find the truth. Lightning split the sky again. He started to blur around the edges. No. He said, panicked. Not yet. Stay, please. I'll come back, I whispered. But you have to be ready. The last thing I saw before the dream shattered was him crying for the first time. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The sheets tangled around his legs. His phone buzzing on the nightstand dot. It was 3:47. A.M. The message still glowed on the screen. Come alone. 10 o'clock. Northbridge lot. No signature, but in his heart he knew. That morning, Shen Wei stared at his reflection in the tinted office windows. He straightened his tie, brushed imaginary dust from his sleeves, and smiled. But behind that polished facade, something was unraveling. He had seen the detective. He had heard rumors of the reopened investigation. He knew it was only a matter of time. He tapped the burner phone in his pocket. Backup plan. Always have a backup plan. And if Hiwo Yunyun got too close, well, accidents happened. Detective Lin sat in her car, watching the Northbridge parking lot through her side mirror. She'd gotten there early. She didn't trust Yunyun to follow instructions. Didn't trust anyone right now. The file she printed was sitting in the seat beside her. Everything tied together. Shen Wei's real identity. The shell companies. The funds tied to Chen Saiji's mother's death, and now her murder. She was going to end this one way or another. At 10:03 a.m. Hiwo Yunyun arrived. He stepped out of the car alone, dressed in black. Eyes hollow, he held nothing in his hands. No briefcase. No file, only a name burning in his mind. Chen Si. He looked around the lot. Empty. No Lin. No Shen. Only silence. Then a figure stepped out from behind the pillar. Shen Wei. Smiling. Yun. Ian single quotes. Blood turned to ice. You, he said, voice low. You're not supposed to be here, Shen said calmly. Where's Lin? Shen tilted his head. You should have stayed asleep. And then, from behind him, another figure. A man in a hoodie, unknown, armed. Yunyun's eyes widened. Trapped. Too late. I felt it before it happened. The surge of fear, of betrayal, of chaos. I followed him into the lot, lingering in the corners of reality like smoke. Now. I threw everything I had into that moment. The lights above sparked. The air grew sharp. The man raised the gun, but the weapon jammed. Electricity. Snap. Shen staggered backward, shouting. Yunyun lunged. A fist met flesh. A second later, police sirens split the silence. Lin stepped out of the shadows. Gun raised. Drop it. Shen hesitated. The moment cracked. He ran. But not far. The backup squad tackled him before he reached the stairs. Lynn walked up to Yonian, chest heaving. "You really don't listen." He didn't reply. His eyes searched the empty air around him. Then, he said softly, "Thank you." Back at the apartment, I hovered in the doorway. I was exhausted, but I felt something shift. Something light, like part of the weight pressing down on me, had lifted. Justice wasn't finished, but vengeance had begun. More importantly, he believed in me now. For the first time since I died, I felt seen. Chapter 8. The truth hidden in the drive Shun Wei didn't speak for the first 6 hours. He sat in the stark interrogation room, hands cupped to the table, face perfectly blank. Detective Lin watched him through the two-way mirror, arms crossed, teeth grinding. "Too calm," she muttered. Her partner nodded. "He knows the system. He's stalling." Lin stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind her. The room felt colder somehow. She placed a single object on the table, a small, black USB drive. My drive. His eyes flicked to it. The first reaction he'd shown. "You recognize this?" Lin asked. Shen leaned back in his chair, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Should I?" Lin plugged the drive into the laptop and turned the screen toward him. The file directory opened. Dozens of folders, each meticulously labeled. Transaction_logs, internal_emails, project_black_asset, Chun_group_records, final_statement.wav. She clicked on the audio file. My voice played through the small speaker. "If you're hearing this, something's happened to me. I don't know who's coming after me, but I've gathered everything I can. These files link back to the offshore. Accounts tied to Chung Group, my mother's company. They tried to bury it after she died. They thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. And I think Shen Wei is involved." Shen didn't blink. Lin paused the audio. "Anything you'd like to say?" He stared at the laptop. Then said, "None of this will stick." Back at the apartment, Huo Yunian sat in my old chair, the USB duplicate in his hands. He had requested a copy from Lin. He didn't tell her why, but I knew he wanted to hear my voice again, and he wanted the rest of the truth, our truth. He clicked. On another folder, journal_notes. Each file opened to scanned pages of my handwriting. The words were angry, precise, painful. I found more documents today. The ones from my mother's hidden drawer. She knew someone was stealing from the company. Shen Wei's father, but she didn't go public. She was too loyal, too scared. A week later, she slipped on the stairs. She never woke up. His hand trembled as he scrolled further. "If anything happens to me, I want you to know. I tried to stay brave. I tried to protect us." He reached for the screen, traced my name. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You were right. You were always right." At the precinct, Lin turned off the camera in the interrogation room. "I'll give you a deal," she said. Shen raised an eyebrow. "Go on. You give me names. All of them. Everyone involved in the cover-up. Everyone you spoke to." "You do that." "And I recommend leniency?" He laughed low and bitter. "There is no leniency in this. Not for me. Not after what she dug up. You killed her." His smile faded. "She wasn't supposed to fight." Lin's voice dropped to a near growl. "She wasn't supposed to die at all." Silence. Then, calmly, he said, "There's a file you missed. Password protected. You'll need it." He slid a slip of paper across the table. On it, password, CHU1126, my birthday. Lin returned to her desk and opened the hidden file. Project Black, asset, full audio recording. She pressed play. A crackled voice filled the room. A boardroom conversation. Multiple voices, all male. Mid-level executives. Nervous. "We need to shut her down." "You mean the daughter?" "Yes, she's asking questions. She has access to the old records." "Then remove the risk." Lin sat in stunned silence. Names. Voices. TIMESTMPS dot. It was all there. Not just Shen. An entire web of power, men who had buried Chun, group sins in exchange for wealth and survival. She opened a case file and began typing. This wasn't just a murder. It was a conspiracy. That night, Huo Yenian dreamed again. This time, we stood on a rooftop, city lights burning far below. He didn't speak, neither did I. The silence between us wasn't cold anymore, it was heavy. Real. I heard your voice, he said at last. All those nights, I kept thinking I was imagining you. You weren't. I should have listened sooner. I stepped closer. There's still more. He looked at me. You mean the others? I nodded. You can't stop now. His expression shifted. Grief hardened into something else. Resolve. Then I won't. Back in the precinct, Shen sat alone in his cell. The smile was gone now. He stared at the wall. At the cracks in the cement. At the flickering light. Overhead. Then something strange happened. The light stopped flickering. It shut off completely. Total. Blackness. And then a whisper, right by his ear. I remember your watch. He froze. Who's there? No answer, only a sudden thud as if something slammed against the bars. He screamed. Guards rushed in, but there was nothing there. Just the prisoner, shaking in his bunk. And the light, blinking overhead again. I drifted away from the cell block. Wasn't done yet, but I had delivered my message. I may not have hands to strike him, but fear. Fear. I could give, and I would. Chapter 9. A name I don't answer. They kept Shen Wei in solitary. Not for punishment, but for safety. After the incident in the holding cell, the screaming, the light outage, the repeated banging against nothing, they had no choice. He refused to sleep, refused to eat. And he kept muttering something under his breath. One word, again and again. Chen Si, you, Chen Si. But he wasn't calling me, he was trying to erase me. Watched him from the corner of the ceiling. He looked like a man unraveling. Thread by thread, the crisp edges of his suit had been replaced with loose fabric and trembling hands. His face was pale. The darkness under his eyes looked like ink stains, and yet he kept whispering. Your name doesn't matter, he said. I didn't even know you. You weren't supposed to matter. He said it over and over, trying to convince himself, but it was too late for that. I mattered, and I was still here. At the same time, Huo Yenian stood in Detective Lin's office, arms crossed, face unreadable. You're sure about these names? She asked, scrolling through the list on her monitor. He nodded. These men worked under the Chung Group before the restructuring. Some of them now control major shares in competing firms. The files on the USB matched what I've seen in internal audits. Lin frowned. They all signed off on Project Black Asset. They buried her mother, he said, and tried to bury her daughter. Lim leaned back in her chair, exhaling. This just went from murder to organized corporate conspiracy. It always was. He turned away from the screen, staring out the window. The city looked clean from up here, but he knew now beneath the glass and steel was wrought. I want in, he said. Lin raised an eyebrow. You're a civilian. I'm also the only one. Who knew Chen Siju? The only one who listened too late. There was silence. Then Lin stood. Fine, but once we move on this, there's no pulling back. I don't intend to. Shen Wei jolted awake from a moment of sleep he hadn't meant to take. He sat upright in the cot, gasping, drenched in sweat. The cell was quiet, but it was too quiet. And then he heard it again. A whisper. This time, it wasn't my name. It was his. Shen. Liang. He froze. That name was buried. Gone. No one used it anymore. Not since he'd erased his past. Not since he climbed his way into the new life. Under a new name. You buried me with lies, I said. The air dropped 10 degrees. His breath fogged in front of his lips. I did what I had to do, he whispered to the dark. You killed me to silence a ghost. Then the lights went out. Total darkness. He screamed. This time, he didn't stop Dot in another part of the city. Lin and Yunyan reviewed the last section of the drive, a single video. Surveillance, footage. My mother, sitting in her office. Meeting. With Shen's father, the audio was muffled, but their body language said enough. She handed him papers. He refused. She pushed harder. He threatened her. Moments later, she was on the phone. I want the board notified. I don't care who's protecting him. The feed cut out. Lin clenched her jaw. They killed her, too, and staged it as an accident. Yang said nothing, but his hand tightened around the mouse. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an anonymous number. Check Shen's financials. The payments didn't stop after her death. He looked at Lin. Someone else is still funding this. Back in the prison, Shen was huddled in a corner, his arms wrapped around his knees. His lips moving constantly. One guard tried to speak to him. Shen screamed and shoved himself into the wall. They're watching, he shouted. She's here. He pointed at the corner of the room. The guard saw nothing, but I was there, hovering, waiting. You didn't just kill me, I said, voice echoing through the concrete and steel. You erased me. You took my mother's life, my voice, my future. He sobbed. I had no choice. There's always a choice. Later that night, I appeared in Huo Yunyan's dream again. He was sitting at the piano, the one we never bought. He looked up when I entered. You're back, he said. I always come back. He studied me quietly. You're stronger now. I nodded. You believed me. That gave me strength. He lowered his eyes. Do you hate me? No, I said softly. I hated being forgotten. He reached for me. Held my hand. I won't forget again. And for the first time, I smiled. But before the dream faded, I said one last thing. There's still one name missing. Chapter 10. Home. Officially, it was nearly over. The headlines read like fiction. Tech empire under investigation for murder conspiracy. CEO linked to 2 deaths via secret fund. Whistleblowers' files trigger corporate collapse. But it was all true. Lin had moved fast. The evidence from my drive, combined with Shen's broken testimony and the traced offshore accounts, was enough to bring down 4 major players. One was arrested boarding a private jet. Another turned himself in. 2 tried to deny everything. None succeeded. Their empire, built on theft, silence, and blood, came crashing down. And in the center of it all was me, a woman they called the Ghost Witness. Shen Wei was transferred to a high-security psychiatric unit. He no longer responded to his name. He no longer slept. When guards tried to feed him, he whispered to the walls, asking me to go away. But I was already gone from him. I didn't need to haunt him anymore. He was already drowning in his own guilt. In the days after the arrest, Huo Yunyan stood at my grave every morning. Sometimes he spoke, other times he said nothing. Today he brought a letter. He unfolded it slowly, kneeling in front of the stone. He told me once, he said aloud, that we never really say goodbye, that if people truly love each other, they find ways back. He placed the letter at the base of the marker. I found my way back. I just wish I hadn't been so late. The wind tugged gently at his coat. Leaves rustled across the cemetery path. He looked up, eyes glistening, and for a moment, just a flicker, he saw me standing beneath the tree, smiling. That night, I visited him one last time, not in a dream, but in memory. He was lying on the couch, arms over his eyes, breathing softly. I sat beside him, invisible but present, and I spoke. You finally came to see me. His eyes didn't open, but his breath caught. You were always looking at everything but me, I whispered. But I stayed. His fingers twitched. I stayed through the silence, the distance, the hurt, and even after I died, I stayed. Tears slipped from the corners of his eyes. But now, I said, I can go. He reached into the air blindly, as if he knew I was there. I'll never forget you, he whispered. Not again. I know. I leaned in, kissed his forehead. A soft breeze passed through the room. At sunrise, he woke up. And the apartment felt light. The air smelled like lavender. On the kitchen counter, a small object had been placed. My hair tie, the one I lost weeks before I died. He stared at it. Smiled. Stood at the window. The city pulsed below, alive, chaotic, full of beginnings and endings. I had done what I came back to do. The truth was out. Justice served. My name remembered. And the man I loved finally saw me. Not just as a memory, but as something real, something permanent. I turned away from the glass and walked into the light, the end.